That morning, I woke up with a queasy feeling in my stomach and a pounding headache that had nothing to do with the few drinks I had the night before. Rob's hand was resting on my back, but the other one was sliding where it wasn't welcome. "I'm not a morning person, babe," I muttered, pushing him off. "Oh, sorry," he whimpered like a scolded puppy. "But didn't you and John used to, go at it all night and half the next day?" I sighed, annoyed. "Yeah, when I was 20 and head over heels in love. Back then, that kind of energy came easy." He seemed disappointed by my response, his voice trailing off as he replied, "Oh." The look on his face made me question my decisions yet again. I mean, on paper, this should have been ideal. I had traded in a 40-year-old man who spent more time tinkering with his car than with me, for a 30-year-old who worshipped the ground I walked on. John, my husband, focused on work and building a future. Rob? He had only me on his mind, and I won't lie, it was flattering. But John, well, he was far from perfect. He wasn't violent, and he didn't try to control me, but man, did he know how to push my buttons? Every argument turned into a standoff, and instead of backing down, he'd just smirk and walk away like it was some kind of joke. It wasn't supposed to be like that. My father always did whatever my mother wanted. He understood the happy wife, happy life rule. But John? He'd give me a look like I was crazy whenever I tried to get my way. If I didn't want to be close, he'd just shrug it off and disappear to mess around with that damn Mustang of his. I hated that car more than anything. And you know what's funny? As my mom used to say, withholding affection made him lose his mind, babbling like an idiot. But after a few days of me icing him out, he started getting real secretive, constantly checking his watch. Then one day, I noticed a calendar in the kitchen with next weekend circled in red, and a few days before it marked too. Something about it seemed off, so I snooped around and found a brochure in his sock drawer. For a luxury brothel in Vegas, of all places. The cover showed these young, attractive women who looked like they couldn't wait to get their hands on my husband. It was like a punch to the gut. What got me the most? He had already crossed out the day, and it wasn't even lunchtime yet. I was furious. I wasn't dumb enough to let him go off and sleep with some professionals while I sat around waiting. I knew where that would lead. He dropped me faster than that Mustang hit 60 in under 5 seconds. So that night, I made a choice. I threw myself at him, hoping to remind him what he had at home. I was boiling inside, but I didn't want to lose him. "Come on, John, it's been a week already," I said, trying to sound seductive. But he barely glanced at me and said, "Nah, I'm not feeling it." I was stunned. Since when did he get to say no? Seriously? I pushed. "I could take care of you." He didn't even flinch. "Maybe later. You don't seem into it anyway." It was like he had flipped the script on me. I'd spent years learning tricks from magazines, TV, even my mother, to keep the upper hand, and now here I was, practically begging. Meanwhile, Rob would have been over the moon just to get a wink from me. The guy worshipped me like some kind of goddess, always ready to please at the drop of a hat. So why hadn't I left John for Rob yet? 2 reasons. First, as much as I hated it, I still loved John. Even though he infuriated me with his dedication to work, his damn sense of responsibility, and his refusal to bend to my will, something in me just couldn't walk away. And second, Rob wasn't exactly bringing home the bacon. John, for all his faults, was raking in a 6-figure salary. Rob's devotion was sweet, but devotion doesn't pay the bills. Maybe that's why things between John and me had gotten so bad. We were in love once, but after 20 years of fighting, we both had our walls up. As I lay there thinking about it all, Rob was gently rubbing my legs, probably trying to cheer me up without making me mad. I glanced at him. It should have been soothing, but instead, I felt more irritated. "Come closer. Rub my chest," I instructed. He eagerly moved closer, trying to please me, but I didn't tell him that his leg rubbing was annoying me. The truth? My chest was as fake as my blonde hair. After surgery, I'd lost most of the feeling in that area. John knew how to touch me there like no one else, which only made me hate him more. He was always amazing in bed. His size alone made me tremble like jelly every time. I couldn't believe he never cheated. It was almost unbelievable that after all these years, he still loved me. That gave me a strange sense of power, knowing that, if I needed to, I could always go back to him. And honestly, if John didn't insist on winning every single argument, I probably wouldn't even think about leaving him. If he'd just let me be in control like I was supposed to, I know we could have been happier. Hell, I would have been happier, and I'd have made sure he was the happiest man alive. But instead, he had to keep pushing my buttons, and I couldn't stand it. Rob helped me see my real strength in relationships. He told me that in divorces, women usually come out on top, while men end up living with their mothers and eating canned tuna. I had to laugh. He wasn't wrong. Rob was living with some woman who wanted to marry him, but he made it clear she wasn't his dream girl. Since they weren't married, getting rid of her would be easy. I nodded in agreement, though I could tell he was surprised I understood. "Today's the day you should give him a call," Rob murmured softly as his fingers moved across my chest. And in that moment, it all clicked. The plan we'd been putting together for weeks now. We had been waiting for the right time, and this week was it. John was out of town on business, and neither Rob nor I had the guts to face him directly about my decision to leave and file for divorce. Just the thought of it twisted my stomach into knots. I've always had a little bit of a conscience, and the idea of calling John while he was away, working hard to fund our lifestyle, felt wrong on so many levels. John didn't deserve to be blindsided like that. If I was going to break things off, it should have been in person, with a serious talk about our marriage and where it went wrong. If we came to the conclusion that it couldn't be fixed, then fine, divorce would be on the table. But this was messy. It wasn't the most moral way to go about it, but here we were. For more than 20 years, John had never once laid a hand on me or raised his voice. He always aimed for a middle ground, which, if I'm being honest, irritated me to no end. He was always too willing to meet me halfway, and if we couldn't come to an agreement, he'd flash that signature grin and walk off, as if to say, "Good luck getting anything if you won't take half." Over time, I learned to read his expressions. It was like he was silently saying, "Why would I want to be close to a 40-year-old wife when I could enjoy myself in Vegas?" The resentment inside me grew, year after year, until I wanted everything. In the divorce, I planned to take it all: the house, the savings, the furniture, and even a chunk of his pension when he retired. I consulted a lawyer, had the papers drawn up, and confided in my mom and friends. While they all assured me I'd win, even my own mother, who never liked John, thought I was being irrational. But their disapproval only fueled me more. The lawyer, only interested in getting his cut, suggested I claim emotional distress and neglect as reasons for the divorce. It was a dirty tactic, but it guaranteed I'd walk away with control over my life. What really stung was John's cluelessness. He had no idea what was coming. But you know what? Life's tough, and I knew he'd bounce back. He's a survivor. Had I actually taken the time to talk to him, I know exactly how it would have played out. He would have tried to work it out or, worse, talk me out of leaving. And that's not what I wanted. Sometimes, you've got to hit hard to get your point across. This was one of those do unto others before they do unto you moments in life. I took a deep breath and picked up the phone. Rob's hand gripped me a little tighter, almost like he was silently cheering me on. There was the sound of trucks rumbling nearby, probably one of the neighbors getting furniture delivered. I dialed the number that I had known by heart for years. The phone barely rang once before he picked up, as if he'd been waiting for the call. "John?" I asked cautiously. "Who else would it be?" he replied, his tone casual, which surprisingly made me feel a little less guilty. "What's going on? Why are you calling me?" he asked, sounding genuinely puzzled. And he had a point. I hadn't called him in years unless it was something I needed for myself. Here was a man who worked his ass off to give us a comfortable life, and I'd basically shut him out. Maybe I didn't have to crush him completely. Maybe I could let him keep a bit more money. I didn't want to hurt him. I just needed out. "I'm your wife," I reminded him, though it felt hollow now, knowing what I was about to do. I could feel my heart racing, the adrenaline kicking in as I approached the finish line of what felt like my escape. But then I felt a sudden shift under me. Rachel, the woman wrapped up in all of this with me, let out a soft moan and pulled me closer, her lips meeting mine in a hungry kiss. Her grip on me tightened as she giggled, clearly enjoying herself while I struggled to keep my head in the game. I took a shaky breath, trying to stay focused, but she wasn't making it easy. "Rachel, babe," I can't hold back, I whispered, feeling myself slipping. Not yet, darling. It'll be so much better if you wait, she teased, her voice driving me wild. How had I only known her for 3 months? It felt like she had this uncanny ability to push me right to the edge, leaving me wanting more. Just as I was about to lose myself completely in the moment, my phone rang, yanking me back to reality. Rachel didn't stop. She was clearly in the middle of something, her legs trembling as she murmured, "Oh, baby, that feels amazing." I tried to regain focus. "What are you doing to me, Rachel?" I asked, slightly annoyed by the interruption. "I'm trying to make you happy, John," she said with a sly smile. I couldn't help but confess, "I've been happy since the day I met you." She grinned. "You'll be even happier when we're done." I reached for the phone, hoping it was important, only to remember the movers were supposed to call when they arrived. How could I have forgotten? Rachel, undeterred, kept up her playful assault, bringing me right back to the edge. Just as I was getting into it again, the phone rang once more. This time, the number on the screen was familiar. I looked at Rachel, who was now watching me with a mischievous grin. After the call, she rolled over, nestling into my side. I couldn't help but admire her. She was like a living sculpture, toned legs, perfect curves, a slender waist. I chuckled, remembering how she joked about God putting more effort into her backside than her chest. It didn't matter. I was falling for her. Hard. Yes, it was happening again, but only for the second time. This time, though, everything felt different, like it was meant to be. This love wasn't just a spark. It felt like a phoenix rising from the ashes of my old life. Maybe I should start from the beginning. 3 months ago, I was a fool, hopelessly in love with a woman who, deep down, probably hated me. We both knew it, yet I still loved her, blindly, I guess. I held on to this belief that she loved me too, even though my marriage was crumbling. We fought constantly, but I chalked it up to being just a rough patch, something every couple goes through. I was dead wrong. My rude awakening came one ordinary afternoon. My secretary announced that I had a visitor, and when Rachel walked into my office, I was instantly confused. She looked out of place, and I had no idea who she was. "Which company do you represent?" I asked, trying to make sense of it. She gave me this sideways smile and said, "I'm part of the You and Me team, out to take down the stupidity of the system." I blinked, completely lost. "I don't follow," I said, my confusion deepening. "Oh, you're about to follow," she replied with a tilt of her petite shoulders. "Your wife is cheating on you." At first, I thought I hadn't heard her right, but the way she said it, so matter-of-factly, like she was telling me the sky was blue, made it impossible to doubt her. Something in my gut told me she was right. Her words hit me like a truck. My heart started racing, sweat broke out across my forehead, and before I knew it, tears were threatening to spill over. All I could picture was Lisa, wrapped around some guy, lost in ecstasy. The image was too much, and the floodgates opened. Tears streamed down my face, and I buried my head in my hands, ashamed of how weak I felt. Then, out of nowhere, I caught the scent of cherries. Warm hands gently lifted my head. I looked up, and there was Rachel, her eyes soft with sympathy. "I'm so sorry," she murmured, her voice full of genuine care. "I didn't expect you to react like this," she said as she perched on the edge of my desk, cradling my head in her lap. "I thought you'd get angry, like I did when I found out about my boyfriend. I thought you'd want to confront him." She stroked my hair, trying to calm me down. "You still love her, don't you?" she asked, shaking her head. "Even though she cheats on you, and probably badmouths you every chance she gets, you still care for her. Why? I don't get it. You've tried so hard to be good to her, but she doesn't appreciate anything you do. What is it about her that makes you hold on?" Her hand kept moving through my hair, her voice soothing, though I wasn't sure if she was trying to comfort me or just thinking out loud. "Is it because she's blonde with big assets?" she asked bluntly. "Rob has a thing for blondes with big chests too." That comment snapped me back. I met her gaze and shook my head. "I loved her before she dyed her hair," I said defensively. "And for the record, I paid for those breasts." Rachel let out a laugh, a sound so beautiful and unexpected that I couldn't help but be caught off guard. What's so funny? I asked, genuinely puzzled. I just think it's hilarious, she said, still chuckling. Your ex doesn't realize her perfect body is more your doing than hers. I bet it cost you a fortune to make her look the way she does. I shook my head again, still feeling like I was in some kind of fog, though my anger was simmering beneath it all. That's when Rachel laid it all out for me. How Lisa had met Rob and what their real plan was. They weren't just having an affair. They were plotting how to cut me out of Lisa's life and take as much of my assets as they could in the process. Rachel had been in a similar situation. She'd supported Rob from the beginning, only to watch him fool around with women at the bar where he worked part-time. He had this obsession with blondes, and in Lisa, he found his fantasy. Apparently, Lisa had become a kind of mother figure to him. On top of everything else, Rachel had hired a private investigator to look into Rob's affairs, and that's when she found out about Lisa. The investigator, Emily Cooper, shared her findings with both of us. Emily, another fiery redhead, told Rachel repeatedly that the information wouldn't help her much, since she and Rob weren't married. Rob could walk away from her whenever he felt like it, with no consequences. But for me, those recordings and photos could be a game-changer in my divorce with Lisa. As the weeks passed, Rachel and I grew closer. The more we uncovered about Rob and Lisa's betrayal, the more we leaned on each other. It all came to a head one evening when we sat in my Mustang, talking about everything that had happened. I looked at her and said, "You deserve so much better than him. Why don't you just walk away?" "Forget about him," she asked, with a small smile. "But I can't just leave without making a point. I don't let people step all over me like that." "But you're not tied to him emotionally anymore, right?" I reasoned. "You've already got the upper hand. You found out his secrets. You're young, beautiful, and you can still find someone who'll actually treat you the way you deserve." Even in the dim light of the car, her green eyes sparkled. She gave me a playful look and said, "So you finally noticed, huh?" "Noticed what?" I asked, genuinely confused. She laughed again, that same enchanting sound I'd grown to love. "Noticed me," she said, "from the moment I walked into your office. I noticed," I confessed, feeling a bit sheepish, but I was too wrapped up in Lisa to see what was right in front of me. She smiled warmly, shaking her head. "I ended things with Rob weeks ago. I stopped caring about getting back at him. I'm here because helping you matters to me. I can't stand the thought of you being financially shackled to those two con artists for the rest of your life. We need to find a way out together." Then, out of nowhere, she leaned in and kissed me. It caught me off guard, but the moment her lips touched mine, I knew. I kissed her back without hesitation, feeling something I hadn't felt in years: hope. At 40, after being married for over 20 years, I thought I knew how to kiss. But all my experience came from Lisa. Kissing Rachel, though? It was an entirely different world. The taste, the feeling. It was unlike anything I'd ever known. I found myself completely lost in her, craving more with each second that passed. The tape recording of our cheating partners became a distant thought, irrelevant in that moment. We didn't even notice the time slipping away. Eventually, a voice broke the spell, but Rachel refused to let go of my hand. "I had a feeling this would happen," Emily said, stepping into the room with a sly smile. "You two make a cute couple. A hell of a lot better suited than with your current partners." Rachel and I exchanged a glance, but I knew Emily was right. "Now that you've found each other, maybe it's time to let those two schemers go. Karma will catch up with them," Emily added. "But what about the divorce and the payback?" Rachel asked, her brow furrowed. Emily, always one step ahead, gave us a rundown of the legal landscape. "The real question is, are you two committed enough to see this through? It's a big decision, and you need to think it over." She smiled before adding, "I'll send you the bill." The weeks that followed were all about perfecting our story. Rachel and I started practicing our alibis, telling our partners that work was busier than usual. The craziest part? They both bought it. Neither Rob nor Lisa had a clue that Rachel and I even knew each other, let alone that we were together. It gave us the freedom to spend more time with each other, to let what was once an attraction blossom into something deeper. One day, I called Rachel at her job. "I'm ready," I said, my voice full of certainty. "I feel like I need to be with you more." This What we have, it's not enough. You silly man, she giggled softly through the phone. We're practically inseparable every night. That's not enough, I insisted. We haven't even, been intimate yet, she whispered, careful not to be overheard at work. I'm sure it'll be incredible, I reassured her. You have no idea, she purred. But you do realize I don't have the same assets as your wife, right? I could hear the hesitation in her voice, but I brushed it off. What does that matter? What makes intimacy amazing isn't the body. It's being with someone you truly love, someone you genuinely want to please. And then she said it. Those 3 words that I didn't even realize I'd been waiting to hear. Tears welled up in her eyes, and her voice trembled as she spoke. I love you too, John, she said, her emotions raw and open. I promise it'll always be this way. You can have every part of me, whenever you want. I'm yours. I was floored. In all my years with Lisa, not even when we were young and in love, had she ever said anything like that. Rachel's words were sincere, filled with a kind of passion that I hadn't experienced before. And no, she continued solemnly, I've never said anything like that to anyone before you. Not even to that idiot Rob. I believe you, I replied, feeling a warmth spread through me. I just want to know how soon we can move forward. We're sticking to Emily's plan, Rachel reminded me. That phone call this morning? That was the signal we were waiting for. The irony of the situation wasn't lost on me. Even though we'd planned everything down to the smallest detail, I couldn't help but feel like fate had a hand in bringing Rachel and me together. For weeks, we'd been careful not to be seen together, but our friends and acquaintances kept dropping hints, mentioning their suspicions about our partner's infidelity. It became almost comical, like a Shakespearean farce. The only ones who seemed clueless were Rob and Lisa, each of them assuming they were pulling the wool over our eyes. Finally, the time came for my fake business trip. It was nothing more than a cover, but it served its purpose. Conveniently, Rachel's mother fell ill around the same time, so we both had excuses to be out of town. It was perfect. We knew that with both of us supposedly away, Lisa and Rob would be emboldened, ready to act on their affair without fear. But things didn't go quite as smoothly as we had anticipated. We'd expected the call to come late Friday night. That's why I had arranged for the moving trucks to show up on Sunday morning. Give the lovebirds a couple of days to think they were in the clear before everything blew up in their faces. Still, Rachel and I couldn't help but savor the moment of triumph. When I answered the phone, I put on my best performance, speaking to the woman I had been married to for over 20 years. Who else would be answering my phone? I said, trying to suppress a smirk. Rachel wrapped her arms around me, her embrace giving me a strength I didn't even know I had. Why are you calling me? I demanded. I'm your wife, she replied in that familiar tone. John, dear, I need to tell you something, and you're probably not going to like it. But in the long run, it's for the best. You'll see that. I couldn't hold it in. I laughed, and I laughed hard. To my surprise, Rob, who had come downstairs to check on the noise from the trucks, joined in, laughing as if he were in on some cosmic joke. I wished he were standing next to me in that moment, so I could knock that smug grin off his face. What the hell are you laughing at? Lisa asked, clearly not amused. I'm serious, she continued, trying to regain control. John, I want a divorce. Her words were heavy with conviction, but I just kept laughing, even harder this time. Oh, I see what's happening, I said through the laughter. You're trying to set things right, aren't you? But it's too late for that. Her voice faltered. What are you talking about? Oh, Lisa, I chuckled darkly. I know this isn't your idea at all. This whole thing? It's Rob's scheme, isn't it? Her silence said everything. It all clicked. Somehow, Rob must have overheard something, probably from the neighborhood gossips. He had figured out that I was onto him. Well, you're about to find out what's really going on, I said, my voice turning cold. And trust me, you won't be laughing for long. I want a divorce, she repeated, more firmly this time. I let out one last laugh, then calmly said, You're not the one calling the shots here, Lisa. Not anymore. Her silence lingered, and I could practically feel her scrambling to regain the upper hand. But it was over. I had the upper hand now, and she was about to find out just how much power she had lost. Was this idiot psychic? How the hell did he know about that letter? No one had seen it, not even Rob. The letter was supposed to go with the divorce papers, laying out exactly how I felt about our marriage and why it had fallen apart. I'd even included a roadmap of sorts, what John needed to do if he wanted to win me back from Rob. But now, it was all unraveling faster than I could control. "John, we need to talk," I muttered, trying to keep my composure. "I think it's better if we do this when you get home. Just remember this, my girl," he crooned through the phone. "When you look at the sky, you can see the stars and still not see the light. Are you eating?" I blurted out in disbelief. I had called to tell him we were done, and this fool was acting like he couldn't care less. He was trying to rattle me. I could feel it. "John, if you don't make changes, we're heading straight for a divorce," I warned, hoping to scare him into taking me seriously. But all I got was more of his nonsense. "Too late for that, honey," he sang, voice dripping with sarcasm. "Ooh, how it hurts." And then, in the background, I heard another woman's voice, murmuring something about how she'd better be the only woman he calls Sweet John. My heart dropped. Who the hell was this woman? "It's never too late," I shot back, my anger rising. "Why do you think it's too late, John? And who is that woman with you?" "Because I've already left," he practically sang. "And I feel stronger, and I sing this victory song. Ooh, oh my God, ooh, ooh." He was mocking me. This wasn't just him being careless. This was planned. "What the hell do you mean you've already left?" I shouted, panic surging through me like a tidal wave. The dread I had been pushing down all morning hit me like a brick wall. I felt like one of those cartoon characters, while Coyote, just realizing the boulder he dropped was about to crush him instead. I strained to hear his response, but all I got was the sound of the call disconnecting. The beeping echoed in my ears. In frustration, I threw my phone onto the bed just as Rob stormed into the room, his face pale with fear. "You need to get dressed and go downstairs. Now," he urged. I threw on a robe, tightening it around me, and rushed downstairs. In the living room stood a tall, imposing black woman, holding a tablet and looking like she owned the place. "Who the hell are you?" I demanded, anger flooding my voice. "Get out of my house." She turned to face me with a calm, measured look, completely unbothered by my outburst. "I'm feeling generous today," she said, her tone steady. "I know this situation must be causing some anger, but I won't tolerate any rudeness or delay. I need this house vacated by the end of the day, and I'm willing to be charitable about it." "You're not getting rid of me," I shot back, my voice shaking. "This is my house. It belongs to me and my husband. It's almost paid off." "Rob called the police," she said with a shrug. "That should help speed things along." I blinked, caught off guard. "Wait, what?" "Rob called the police. He's hoping to hurry this along. But this house isn't almost paid off. It's fully paid off. And today, ma'am, is about to be one of the most humiliating days of your life." I could feel my heart sinking, but I still had no idea what she was talking about. As Rob stood there dialing, everything started to spin. And then John's smug words echoed in my mind. What was that victory song about? What had he meant? Moments later, Tom Reed, the police chief, and a longtime friend of both John and me, walked in. The woman strode past me and handed him a stack of papers. He flipped through them, nodding to himself before finally turning to face me. He glanced over at Rob, then back at me. "Is this him?" he asked. "Who?" I asked, still trying to catch up with what was happening. "Don't be upset," Tom said, almost apologetically. "I just want to confirm, this is the guy you've been cheating on John with, right?" Bold move, having him in John's house. I froze, my stomach dropping even further. I had forgotten, John sold the house. Before I could even process what Tom had said, a bubbly woman bustled in behind the moving crew. She looked Rob up and down before flashing me a condescending grin. "They said you were naive, but I had to see it for myself." "What are you talking about?" I snapped, feeling completely out of control. "Half the women in town are talking about it," she said with a smirk. "Wondering why you traded your husband for a guy who's smaller in the pants and has zero income." Maybe there's some truth to the idea that silicone rots your brain. Hey, Tina, Tom cut in, trying to redirect the conversation. Let's stick to the facts, okay? He turned toward Rob, approaching him slowly. Hey, buddy, he began, eyes twinkling with mischief. Do you know what a woman says to a man with a really big male organ? Rob looked completely bewildered. No, I don't. Of course you don't. Tom shot back with a grin, and he and Tina burst out laughing. Can we get back to business? The black woman asked, wiping away tears of laughter. Lisa, it's time for you to pack up and leave. John sold the house. He can't do that. I yelled, my voice cracking. This is my home. I picked it out, even if he paid for it. Actually, Lisa, he can, Tom said, stepping closer. He bought the house with his money. His name's the only one on the deed. He can do whatever he wants with it. That's nonsense, I protested. Women always get the house in a divorce. Not always, Tom replied calmly. And by the way, you're not getting divorced. Not yet, anyway. I straightened up. Well, I'm filing tomorrow. You should have done it last week, Tom said with a chuckle. That's when John sold the house. Is this even legal? I demanded, feeling trapped. It's not illegal, Tom said, with a bit of a smirk, though it is sneaky, kind of like sleeping around while your husband's out working to buy you all these luxuries. But yeah, it's completely legal. I cursed under my breath. Rob, call my lawyer. And I need to get the bank on the phone. We need to freeze our accounts before this gets worse. You can take that call outside, the black woman said dismissively, waving her hand as her team began removing furniture from the house. Where the hell are they taking my furniture? I shouted, feeling the last bit of control slipping through my fingers. Your husband donated it, she replied coolly, to a local charity auction house. You can always buy it back, of course. I handpicked all of this, arranged it, paid for it. Maybe you should have helped chip in, Tina quipped, unable to resist one last jab. Oh wait, does hair bleach mess with your brain? I ignored her, grabbing my phone and dialing the bank. Carly, it's Lisa Foster, I said, trying to sound authoritative. Yes, John's wife. My lawyer will be in touch soon. I need to make a withdrawal before anything gets frozen. Let's handle this, I said, trying to keep my cool, though I could feel the panic rising. I need enough funds to keep things afloat for a while. So during the freeze, does it just lock the current account, or can John redirect his direct deposit? Just the current account, Carly explained. But I think he switched his direct deposit last week when he quit his job. What? I gasped. He quit his job? Oh, yeah, she added, as if it were common knowledge. He left last week. The realization hit me like a brick. Carly, I need to empty all our accounts. Transfer everything into a new one. Okay? Are you sure about that? She asked cautiously. Damn right, I am. I snapped. John's gonna find another job faster than Tina can scarf down a bucket of chicken wings. But this money? It's all I've got until the divorce is final. Okay, Carly replied with that infuriating calm. But I'll need to issue you a check for the amount, and you'll need to deposit it into your new account. Fine, whatever, I huffed. Just get it done. Consider it done, she said smoothly. When you come by, I'll have a check waiting for you, for $3.11. What are you talking about? I practically screamed. There's nearly $500,000 in that account. There was, Carly said calmly, but not anymore. I know how much was there. I see that. What the hell happened last week? I turned to Tom, the police chief, desperate for some legal lifeline. This has to be illegal, right? It's not illegal, Tom replied with a sigh. It's sneaky and dirty, but perfectly legal. Yeah, he added with a touch of sympathy. And now you don't even have enough left to cover the bank's minimum balance fee. You're short of the $50 minimum, and they'll hit you with a $10 fee. You've got $3.11 left, Lisa. I couldn't believe it. Rob handed me the phone, and I broke down while talking to my attorney, sobbing as I explained how John had sold the house, drained all our accounts, and even liquidated the investments. I logged into our investment account, and sure enough, everything was gone except for a single share in some cheese company. Well, that's clever, my lawyer remarked, sounding almost impressed. He outmaneuvered you, and it's all completely legal. Until the divorce is filed, he can do whatever he wants with his assets. He's probably moving everything offshore where you can't touch it. He's making sure you'll walk away with nothing. And quitting his job, my lawyer continued. That was genius. When he shows up in court broke and unemployed, you won't have any claim to his income. Hell, I doubt he'll even show up at all. I think he's gone, I whispered, the weight of it all sinking in. He left me before I could leave him. And now, I have no idea where he is. How do you plan to serve him with divorce papers if you don't know where he is? My lawyer asked, his tone cold. Can't I just divorce him for abandonment? I pleaded, grasping at straws. It takes 3 years for that, he explained. Do you have enough to last that long? I just told you. He drained all our money. I shouted, tears mixing with my rage. I can't afford anything now, let alone your fees. Click. The call ended, and with it, the last shred of hope I had. All I could hear was the sound of the movers snickering as they cleared out the house, tearing apart what was left of my life. That's how I ended up crashing at my mom's house, trying to pick up the pieces. John had been thorough. He sold or gave away everything. He even took all the cars, both Mustangs and the winter Jeep. He kept my new Lexus too, but I couldn't make the payments, so it got repossessed. I consulted with every pro bono lawyer I could find, but they all said the same thing. What John did was brilliant and completely legal. There's no law saying a man has to stick around just because he's married. He had every right to sell the house since it was in his name, and as the primary account holder, he could empty the accounts whenever he wanted. He won. I tried calling him, but his number was disconnected. It was as if he had disappeared off the face of the earth. I was sure there had to be a clue in the message he left, but I was too blinded by my own stupidity to see it. Days turned into weeks. Weeks stretched into months. And soon enough, Rob was gone too. He couldn't pay rent after his other girlfriend left him for some new guy on the same day John abandoned me. The irony was almost painful. One day, as I sat cleaning hotel rooms with my mom, I heard a song on the radio. It was by a band I vaguely knew of, the Eagles. Glenn Fry was singing Already Gone, and the words hit me like a ton of bricks. The whole thing felt like my life playing out in front of me. The nonsense John had been crooning during his escape, it was all from that song. I broke down right there. I spent months cleaning hotel rooms, barely surviving. I used to take everything for granted, thinking I deserved more than I had. But now, after years of struggle, I realized how much I had thrown away. I thought back to how I used to spend more on makeup in 2 weeks than I now earned in a month. At 43, my chances of reclaiming any of that life felt slim. I'd gained a few pounds, stopped dyeing my hair, and lost the spark I once had. Then one day, I came home to find an invitation waiting for me. No signature, but I knew it was from John. The next day, I received another one, inviting me to meet at a local cafe. And suddenly, it clicked. John could have wiped out everything, but he left me $3.11 in the account. 3 years, 1 month, and 1 week since he left me. That was it. My sentence was over. I had paid my dues. I cursed myself for not seeing it sooner. Maybe I could have spent the last few years getting back in shape, dieting, reclaiming what I had lost. But as I sat there, I realized it didn't matter anymore. John had always loved me, just as I was, before the blonde hair, before the implants. I thought back to the last line of that song he sang to me before he left. You've been up and down this highway, but now it's time to go. John had moved on. Maybe it was time I did too. It happens so often that we live in chains, unaware we already hold the key. That thought lingered in my mind as I studied the invitation. It felt like a message, as though we had come full circle. I was certain it meant John was ready to reintegrate me into his life. The realization struck me like a bolt of lightning. I had been a fool all along. I was always the one in control. While I drifted, John worked tirelessly to fulfill my every whim. The only time he ever refused me was when I tried to push him into something he simply didn't want. And when I threatened to leave him, to divorce him, he took it personally. So personally that he left me first. For 3 years, I had dreaded the arrival of divorce papers, certain they'd show up sooner or later. But they never came. Now I understood why. John still loved me, and I was filled with anticipation for our reunion. I arrived at the bar a little early. The place was dimly lit, and a disheveled bartender, his face flushed from what looked like heavy drinking, walked over to my table. "You've put on some weight," he blurted out, his tone far too familiar. "How many donuts you been eating?" I shot him a look. "Have you been drinking enough to forget your own failings, Rob?" He laughed bitterly. "I thought you knew I still worked here." "I got an invitation for lunch at the cafe across the street," I said, trying to stay composed. "Just came here to gather my courage." "That's strange," he muttered. "Bit of a coincidence." "What are you talking about?" I asked, my curiosity piqued. "I got an invitation too," he revealed. "Did yours come with a weird riddle?" "It wasn't much of a riddle," I replied. "It was just John's way of telling me he wants me back." "What did it say exactly?" he pressed. "We've come full circle," I recited. "I'm ready to give you what you want." Rob nodded. "Yeah, that's different from mine." Mine asked, "Why does a squirrel hide nuts in its nest?" I frowned. "I have no idea what that means." "I think it's Rachel," Rob said confidently. "She wants me back. Squirrels hide nuts to protect them from birds, and birds is slang for women. She's telling me she doesn't want me messing around with other women." I couldn't help but scoff. They've probably cooked up this scheme together, hoping we'll crawl back to them after all the suffering. But suddenly, all the patience I'd cultivated over the past 3 years evaporated. "You know what?" I snapped, standing up abruptly. "If John wants me back, he's gonna have to work for it." With that, I stormed out of the bar and headed to the cafe across the street. I found a small table inside and settled in, scanning the room. It wasn't long before Rob appeared, sitting down at a table outside on the sidewalk, where two college kids were playing hacky sack. He waved to me but seemed more interested in their game. I sighed, watching him from the window. As the boy's bag flew toward Rob, knocking over his glass, he rose angrily, only to get hit again, this time in the groin. One of the guys attempted to kick the bag back up but missed, fortunately without causing any damage. However, his foot landed squarely in Rob's lap, and the scream that followed was enough to make everyone stop and stare. Waiters rushed over to help him to his feet, and an ambulance arrived not long after. As Rob was being loaded in, I walked up to him and said, "You got it wrong, Rob. The riddle. It wasn't about birds." Through his pain, he groaned. "What?" "She didn't want you back," I clarified. "It wasn't about birds. It was about reproductive organs." "Doesn't matter," he mumbled, wincing in pain. Before he could say more, a tall, fair-haired girl, young enough to be a college student, approached with a briefcase in hand. She chewed gum nonchalantly, sizing me up. "Are you Anna Foster?" she asked. "Yes," I answered sharply, already on edge. She handed me a stack of papers. "His list of demands," she said coolly. "You've been served." I blinked, confused. "Why don't you ask him yourself?" She smirked. "I'm just the messenger." I stared at the papers, stunned, and glanced around the cafe. That's when I saw him, John. And it all clicked. The riddle, the meaning behind the invitation. Full circle didn't mean what I thought. It wasn't about rekindling our relationship. It meant I had come full circle, but not in the way I had hoped. John hadn't invited me back into his life. He had moved on, and now I was being forced to accept that I had gotten exactly what I wanted, a divorce. The realization hit hard. After all this time, it wasn't what I wanted anymore. I scanned the room again and spotted him sitting at a table, looking better than he had in years. He seemed happy, content in a way I hadn't seen before. But he wasn't alone. A young woman sat beside him, red hair, stunning, and very pregnant. And between them, holding each of their hands, was a little girl. She looked like a perfect blend of them both, with John's dark hair and her mother's vibrant green eyes. The girl smiled at me, and for a moment, it felt like the same knowing smile John had. Maybe it was genetic, or maybe she sensed what was happening just as I did. I realized then that it was truly over. Any hope of getting back with John was gone. He had moved on, emotionally and physically, and there was no point in fighting for him. This redhead, she had given him everything I hadn't. She gave him her heart, her love, and apparently children too. I glanced back down at the divorce papers in my hands. John had outmaneuvered me completely. He'd filed for abandonment, which meant I would get nothing. No alimony, no share of his assets, nothing. He had one, and he had done it legally. I looked up one last time, hoping for a glimpse of the man I had once loved, but it was too late. John and his new family were already gone, leaving me behind with nothing but my regrets.